I will ask you also for everyone to mute themselves when you are not joining the conversation, but I see that everyone is doing it, so that's perfect. Except you, Anneli, okay?
I will.
Perfect. Okay, we are soon at 25. Okay, we have reached 25, so we will start. Yes, so I will start by introducing myself. My name is Raya, but most of you all know me. I'm the CEO at the Factory Academy, where we run accelerator programs for startups and growth companies. We currently help 100 plus startups via the 3 programs we are right now running. And these startups and growth companies, we help them get access to knowledge, tools, and network they need to grow. We also invest in some of the companies. This session is for the entrepreneurs today, really to, as mentioned, to help you answer your questions. I have some notes, I have to follow my notes to make sure I don't forget anything. Yes, I also would like you, because we're many today, I would like you to use the chat to let me know who's a startup here. Even if I do recognize some faces, I want to make sure that we give the opportunity to everyone to speak. So use the chat, say, hi, this is Greg from, and the name of your startup. Yes, hi, Greg. Same for another example, you say Christina from Listfully. For me to know that who are the startups here, and I will give the opportunity to each one of you to jump into the conversation, pitch very quickly, just tell us who you are, what you do, and what's the biggest challenge you currently face. Okay, so please start using the chat, start saying hi, and who you are. Well, I think we can just start. And before that, Ornit, I will just let you tell us a bit about yourself, your experience as an entrepreneur, what you do at Citi, and we will start after that with the questions. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. Very happy to meet you all. Some of them faces I also recognize, so that's a good sign of the time I've been spending in Norway. So I'll tell you a little bit about my role in Citi, and I'll also tell you a little about me prior to that, so you have some context. And I'm here in order to help you in any way you see fit. And I'm seeing that on my team, Chaim and Gali have joined, so I'll introduce them as well, so you know all the people you have here at your disposal to help you. So I run external innovation at Citi, and that includes both the venture investing for Israel, but also the business development and commercialization team for the Nordics and Israel. And in that context, we have Chaim, who's in charge of commercialization of startups, and Gali in charge of business development, who are on the call, and I'm sure that they will be delighted to work with you guys and understand how and where they can help you. Typically, Citi invests in very few companies, but works to commercialize with many more statistically. We typically invest in companies that are, I'd say, round A and up, often and up. In terms of commercialization, we're looking at companies that already have a real product. It's not necessarily a great match to come to a very large corporation with a PowerPoint. It might help you to get some inputs and direction, but overwhelmingly, it's harder at that point for us to engage really deeply with a company. So bear that in mind. Despite having said that, of course, if you do want to understand if you're in the right direction, we're definitely game to have a conversation with you and give you some inputs. So a few words about me. I'm going to tell you the truth, but I ask you to please not stone me. I am a lawyer by education. I know it's not a popular profession. Very aware of that. Maybe one of the reasons I left, I think I was at the time looking to find ways to work in a manner that is win-win. And I found that in the legal profession, overwhelmingly, it's I only win if you lost. So was very happy to go into high tech, started my career in sales, marketing, business development. I then founded a number of companies. I have 6 exits to my name, some as founder, some as teammate, some as employee, really a broad variety. I have some dismal failures to my name as well. Probably the ones that I learned the most from, and by the way, the ones that are the dearest to my heart, the ones that I really cared for and fought over despite the outcome, or maybe because of the outcome in the end. In 2011, I founded a company thinking that with that company, I was going to become an advisor to startups, pretty much what we're doing now, but I thought it would be one-on-one and the startups would pay me, give me equity. What happened was that Sony reached out and said, could you work for us? And so I started with Sony, and then I worked with Citi Ventures and with, Citi was the next step up. They came to me and said, could you please set up an external innovation program for us? Eventually, I worked for Lenovo, and I have now come back to Citi. So I've really got a very broad perspective of what corporates like, how they work, what makes them tick. But I also have this understanding of what it is to be an entrepreneur, how painful it is, how exhilarating it is when it goes well. And I would be more than happy to try and talk to you about all of those things wherever is relevant or helpful to you. Maybe one last perspective. I know I'm only 28, but I've had the great joy of going through 3 crises. I was in high tech in the 2001, 2008, and the current pandemic. And so I have, I think, a perspective on what happens, what it looks like during the crisis, what it looks like after, what, best practices have been. We never know what is going to happen, but we can try and learn from what has happened. So happy to share that with you guys as well.
Thank you, Ornit. Yes, I realized. Thank you. Okay, so let's get started. I really encourage you to use the chat as mentioned, because this is where I'm going to know who is here, and I'm going to invite you to ask your questions. I will start with Christina from Listfully. Where are you, Christina? I'm going to invite all the entrepreneurs to jump into the conversation. So just get ready. If you're here, you will ask questions. Christina? Yes.
I don't know if you can see or hear me. I'm multitasking a little, Raya, so I'm sorry. I just got out of another meeting and I was trying to do something right before. So of course I was first. But I guess hi, Ornit, thank you for joining us and answering our questions. How can I be really specific, Raya?
Yes, please.
So we are, we just started raising for a pre-seed round, like sort of a little bit above friends and family type, small scale angels, but not quite VC level. And we started that in January or February, and then Corona came. So it was like literally the best timing ever. But so that kind of like those leads and the meetings and stuff that we had set up and the discussions we had started with new investors kind of went cold, or they said we have to wait till after to see how things are going to go, et cetera. So we were able to raise sort of a quick fix round now to get us through like the summer and into the fall, just to keep working. But I still need to raise this round. So my point is, should I try to raise for like a whole year and a half of runway this year, which is what ideally I would rather do? Or should I reduce it, raise for a shorter amount of time because of Corona and just to make sure it goes through? Does that make sense? Like, should I reduce the amount that we wanted to raise and therefore have to raise again in a shorter amount of time than I would like because this situation is making it harder to commitment?
So I think it's a great question. Thank you for that one, because I suspect that there's 1 or 2 other people on this call that got stuck with the same conundrum. So I'll tell you what we typically say. We recommend companies have 18 to 24 months of runway. And that's a great statement, right? I think when you're sitting on your mountain of money and you tell others, oh, you should have that much money, it's a great statement, but how do you actually get that done when you're on the other side and you have to go out and raise the money? So the other next smart statement that we usually say is you should try and be as lean as you can, meaning spend less than you would have planned, have less headcount than you had planned, try and make the money last as long as possible. I think, I commend you for having been able to find money till after fall, because predictions say that by then everyone will have calmed down and everything will be back to, I don't know if normal, but better than it is right now. Right now, valuations are, humbler than they were before that. to your question, if you can raise, I would certainly recommend trying to raise enough for a number of reasons, meaning a larger round, right? First of all, you always need more money than you expect to. So whatever you have on your budget, multiplied by 20, 30, 40%, it's probably going to be correct.
Yeah.
Secondly, you always take longer to do the revenue projections than you actually thought. So whatever you have in your first, second, and third year is probably at best your second, third, and fourth year. So knowing all of this, your odds of getting to your A round in a good manner are further away than you imagine, and COVID has only made that situation even more tangible, I would say.
Yep.
So if you have, and one last thing, and I'm saying this, and I hope there are no other investors on the call because they're going to beat me up for this, but we typically take the same percentages in the company regardless of how much money we invest in the company. So if you're doing your seed round, whether you take $1 million, $2 million, or $3 million, or euro, or whatever, the VC on the other side will take the same 20 or 25 or 30% that they want in the company. So if you can present a logical story that explains why you need that amount of money and why you're worth that amount of money now, then I would certainly recommend going for the bigger round. I would say one more thing. First of all, a lot of great companies were created during recessions, so it's not a reason to give up. It is probably a reason to double check your use case, your business model, try and make sure that it makes sense in the current times. But in the end, you need to have enough stock of something that survived. And so money is the key to that. So I think being somewhat less worried about your holdings right now is a good methodology, understanding that if you are very successful, you'll be able to turn around to the board and say, give me more stock now in the company. I've been overly diluted later on at a different stage. The only place where you'll really, really be paying a price for this is if your company has a tiny exit. If you have a tiny exit, nobody's giving you more. And if you got over diluted, then it is what it is. But if you at least survived, I think that would already be a good start.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
It's such a funny situation because we're a retail tech startup and just launched like a new e-commerce tech solution like 3 weeks before the Corona thing happened as well. And we're growing it's amazing. Like we're growing like 4 times faster than before. It's gone super well. So our product and our business hasn't really suffered. It's just sort of getting that assurance, knowing that I can raise enough money short enough and build the team and really achieve what we had set out to do in the beginning of the year.
So you should really tell that story because, for instance, when we look at startups, that is an essential part of how we evaluate whether to invest and how much to invest. The fact that you are a beneficiary of COVID as opposed to a victim of COVID makes you a lot more appealing from a venture investing point of view.
Okay, that's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you. So we are many today. I am not sure we'll manage to cover everyone's questions and I cannot guess who has questions. So please, in the chat, raise your hand if you have questions. So it's going to be easier for me to find you. In the meantime, I know some of the startups that have questions. So I'm going to invite Magnus. Magnus?
Hello.
Yes. Please tell us briefly about yourself and what's the challenge you're facing right now.
Yeah, we are Snapbooks. We're building a certified accounting robot, and it's early phase for us. We're currently talking with potential customers and trying to see if we can get the concept in order. So and we're pretty new to this to investing and these things. So for me, it's how do you find investors and how do you approach them?
Yeah. Basically, when you're outside this startup community, you haven't had the opportunity yet to build your network. So where do we start on it? Where do we find these investors? How do we approach them?
So and I don't know what the situation right now is in Norway, so it's an interesting question. Typically, in non-COVID times, what I would say is go get coffee. Go get coffee with your high school friend who's now working in a corporate. Go get coffee with an investor that you were in university with. Go get coffee with whoever you know that is a good start for your network. So I'd say that right now the equivalent would be, politely ask them for a 15-minute Zoom call, say what you're trying to do and that you would appreciate their advice. Overwhelmingly, these people will each introduce you to at least one more person. And that one more person will introduce you to another person in turn. Not everyone's going to be nice. And I'm not sure how friendly the Norwegian ecosystem is, but from my experience, I think people are helpful and friendly. And I can tell you that in Israel, your network would grow like wildfire. From the first one, you'd get 1 to 5 introductions. For those introductions will go on, and you within a few months could have a network of 50 to 100 people that are aware of you, have heard of what you're doing, hopefully are somewhat friendly to your needs and wants, and will introduce you. I can tell you that with my first startup, I met a VC who really, really liked me, brought me to his management team. They thought that it wasn't a good idea. They rejected the idea outright, but he then went on to introduce me to so many other people that he actually helped me raise almost all of the money I had in the company at the time. So sometimes it's about finding the right sponsor. And sometimes, it's just, I'd say always it's about resilience, right? You need to not take offense when they tell you it's a dumb idea. I've heard so many people say that all of my ideas have been dumb, and some of them were right, some of them were wrong, but you cannot despair. And I think the important thing at that point is to remember to listen, because some of their advice might be right and you might tweak your idea, but also not to lift your hands, raise your hands in despair and say, oh, it's that bad idea, whatever, I'm done. So just go talk to people.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ornit. I see some others who joined us, and I know that you have met Kevin, right? Ornit?
Yes, I have.
Kevin.
Yes, I have.
How are you, Kevin?
I'm good. Apologies for the my lateness. I'm well. We're extremely busy these days, which is in a good way. Yeah, we're forging ahead with everything, and got some really key strategic pilots on the way. So all good.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Do you have any question for Ornit?
Yeah, I probably have quite a lot. I was wondering, sort of how one, when is the accelerator starting up again, and two, we're looking into branching into the American market as well. So I'd really like to learn about how Israeli companies, because I know that they have to jump ship, so to speak, quite quickly in order to scale, and we'd like to emulate some of those structures and that mindset. And how do we go about that?
So maybe that's a very good question, and I think part of it is, first of all, let me say a few things. Chaim, can you raise your hand? Gali?
And also, Ornit, maybe you can, I don't know if you mentioned that actually Citi has an accelerator.
So Chaim and Gali are on the call right now. It's Chaim Haviv and Gali Amor. They both run the accelerator, and we've actually restarted it, and we're doing it in a slightly different way this time around. We're not waiting to have an entire class, but rather we're encountering companies that we think are relevant and interesting, finding mentors for them, and then based on who we find to have a good strategic fit to Citi, we're working directly with them. So you're all more than welcome to reach out to them. You can reach out through Raya, she can connect you, and we would be delighted to hear from you and see what companies could be a good match for us and where we can help. I think your question regarding Israeli startups is a very good one. I was talking to Gali yesterday, and we were talking about how Israelis typically are rude, right? We have a conversation, we'll be yelling, we'll be talking over each other. We don't wait politely for one to finish for the next one to start. And we were talking about Scandinavian startups, and we saw that you guys are much better about this. You're polite. You know how to do a pitch. You're very calm and collected. So I think you need to become ruder, is what I'm going to say. No, don't become ruder, but more aggressive a little bit in your position. I think, first of all, don't take no for an answer. If someone says something, it's perfectly okay to say, that's a great point, but, and, you know, push back and try and get your point through on things that you want. That's one difference, I would say, between the two ecosystems. The second one is positioning and targeting. From the get-go, Israeli startups are targeting companies outside of their ecosystem. Nobody's going after Israeli clients, even though it's much easier to call up a local bank, to call up a local accounting firm or whatever. People from the get-go target very large problems and problems that are sometimes not even in Israel. I'll give you an example. They might look at how to automate the PPP, which is the way the US government is providing loans to SMBs right now. It's a purely US problem. They might sit in Israel and go and develop a solution for that in the US. And I'm on purpose taking something like this just so you guys understand how much they're focused. And I think, and maybe this is, very relevant to you, Magnus, try and think from the get-go about something that is not a localized solution for your market, but rather resolves a real issue, a large issue on a global scale. And then start reaching out to people on a global scale. So if it's an accounting, look at something that could work with Intuit, for instance. Think very, very large, think very broad, and then you'll be in a much better position to try and approach the companies right away with that. I'm not saying don't work with the local banks. Of course, they might have great solutions and be able to give you a POC, but bear in mind that the international investors might look and say, yeah, you probably know someone in that bank, I'm not that impressed. So you do really want to go out globally as soon as you can.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I see that actually now I have a few people who have questions in the chat, and we're going to go to Alyosha. And this is outside the fintech, retail, prop tech that we usually focus on. This is about the music industry. Alyosha, are you with us? Are you still here? Perfect. What's your challenge? You can unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself.
I will proceed to explain our startup. Our startup, which I co-founded with Alyosha, deals with a full spectrum of apps and multimedia projects. And just let me just a second. And basically what we're trying to do is to right now develop a karaoke app, which has the potential to maybe revolutionize the TikTok paradigm, because that is kind of like the standard gold standard right now. So we've proceeded to develop a beta of our app. And well, we're right now participating at PG Connect, which is an event where we have approached several heavy hitters of the industry. We're trying to outreach to venture capitalists, and well, we're trying to grow our network, and so we're trying to find people who could help us scale up, who could make us thrive. And so any advice and any networking would be most welcome. And so what would your advice be for us in these times of COVID?
Look, it's not my space at all, but I would try and get to people that are in relevant areas. And, from my lack of understanding of the space, so apologies in advance, but I would say I would try to reach out, for instance, to the founders of Spotify, who may be closest already to that world, that are close to you guys in terms of region, and may be willing to lend out a hand to people at the beginning of their way. And they might even actually see your product and say, this is super exciting, you should go talk to X and help you out. So that's one. The second thing I would do is reach out to companies that you think have technologies that might be interesting. I don't know if it's relevant, and so again, what I'm saying might be completely irrelevant. But for instance, karaoke manufacturers might be interested in having your app so that people could use their product and have another reason to buy a karaoke device in their house, whatever, right? You might want to talk to music companies like Sony, like Yamaha. They might be interested in co-branding, white labeling, who knows. And you might want to do things that are just grassroots stuff. So create a competition in which you provide a prize. So I don't know if you've raised any money yet, but sometimes you can really do things with very little money. If you propose, for instance, $100 to every 100th person signing up, that's a $1 cost of acquisition, if you will. So that might be too much or too little, but you can play around with stuff like that and say, for every 1,000th video that's put on, we'll give them X. Those might be things. And then finally, and I really don't know who those people might be, but you might want to reach out to famous artists in the space, probably ones that are in your ecosystem first, because they might be more willing to be nice to start with. The others might be snobbier in the beginning, but you never know, right? Some of them actually spend money on venture investing, so they might be willing to reach out at this point. So I would try to go to people like that who could try and help you reach out to more people quite easily. By the way, I was involved in a startup that spent maybe $10,000 on appearing on a very obnoxious radio show in New York. And I don't remember the name of the guy. It's the guy that keeps swearing all the time in the US. Very, very
with the long hair.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they went to his show. He kept swearing. There was a lot of noise around it, and he kept saying, "Oh, and you should use that startup." And lo and behold, the result was that the company was acquired a month later, literally a month later. So sometimes it's about spending the right marketing money in the right place to make sure people know about you.
Thank you. Thank you. I see also there is one of our startups. I know they have questions, and I'm going to invite them. Ivan, are you here? From Noon Invest. And since it's a fintech and your expertise is fintech, it's going to be a good match. Noon Invest, are you here? Okay. So, okay. So I will invite him later on. Let's go to Karina. Can you tell us about yourself and your current challenge? You mentioned that you're building a retail tech startup.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Okay, I was just talking with my colleague here, so let me check and let me see each other. Hi, I'm Karina Fernandez. I'm Key Account Manager for Best Please Norge. I think we had met before with Raya, and we had a phone call because we are interested on different things at the moment. First of all, we have MVP already, a beta version, and we're going to launch our platform, which is an e-commerce platform and digital product for price comparison in Norway. And we want to expand in the Nordic countries, starting from Sweden, and afterwards different other countries in the region in Europe. And at this stage, we have an own capital, and we are investing in me for starting the project and developing everything that has to be related with the configuration and the business side. And also the platform, we are working with one designer and one developer in India and in Portugal. So the funding, that the capital that we had been using has been used on this, but we are raising more money for marketing and for going out there in the market and compete with the rest. We have 3 features that makes us different, but that's kind of a surprise. So I don't have the time to go into details. So we want to differentiate ourselves from the market with these 3 key things that we want to develop. But for that, of course, we need money, and that's why we are here. First of all, we already have the numbers on what we want to achieve and how much money do we need. And we are also interested on making part of an accelerator program that can help us with investment or meet VCs. We are open to different opportunities on investment.
So I have some bad news, I would say, Karina. Typically, VCs like to invest in one of two things, either in the technology side of things or in the growth of the marketing. But the initial stage of putting in the initial money for marketing is the least popular stage for investment. And the reason for that is because when you had the money for the development, you should have spent a little bit of it on actual marketing, I would say. So if you still have some money, or if you can bootstrap it somehow, I would recommend at least getting to some initial numbers that you can share so that you can get people, I guess, convinced that you have your cost of acquisition clear, that there is a real product market fit. Otherwise, it's quite difficult to do this. And I would recommend still trying to go the friend and family route at that stage to get past that hurdle, I would say. And I would probably, I wouldn't be surprised if now is an even harder time because of COVID. Hold on, my dog is making a lot of noise here. Enough. Apologies for that. So I would recommend trying to get through that hurdle of getting some proof with either private money or your pre-raised or your own money, because it's very, very hard to get VCs to move at that stage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's one of the options that we have. They have a list of options: crowdfunding, again, capital, friends, angel investors. We are knocking different doors, as I already explained on the chat. And we are open to raise this amount of money from different sources and reach out that to invest in first the technology and the marketing. So we are in a phase that we are launching at the end of this month. And after that, we may need to continue working on the business side, building the customer's portfolio. We have a list of customers that we want to work with. And we have also built a portfolio of investors that we are in current contact.
Thank you, Karina. Thank you, Karina. We have also a question from Greg, and it's actually a question that comes back a lot from our startups. And we are even hosting a session end of June with Ketil Vig, who's very experienced in this startup space. He's been investing a lot in as an angel investor. So there is a session coming about this because we know how it's important. However, Ornit, we would love your help today. So Greg, you're asking, you're a solo founder for now, and you wonder how to split the equity between founders. So it would be great to get your input on it. So how do you do equity split with your founders? How much equity you should have for investors? How much equity you should have for future employees? What we should have in mind when we also go when we structure our company and also raise money? What do investors want to see? What is a good sign?
So those are all great questions, and I think we all have deliberations in these fields, and there's all these mantras and things that are right. Give me 1 second, I'll get her out of the room, otherwise I'm going to get bitten and this is not going to work. Just a second. I apologize for this. I have a little puppy and she was very excited. So I think these are great questions. If you look at the way it typically works, you often found a company with a number of other people, and then often it's just split in an equitable manner between the first founders, and that's very easy. Or if there's a very senior founder and a few junior ones, then 50% and 25-25, or whatever other agreement the founders get to. The situation is a lot more complicated when you have a founder that has been running for a period of time, has been doing the work, and suddenly he wants to add someone who wants to also be a founder. And I would say that I would divide the issue into two parts. One part is the title founder, and the other part is the equity. It's much easier to give someone an ego boost and give them the title founder, whether founded or not, forgive the pun, as opposed to giving them a very large stake. More so, I would also be wary about giving them any stake until you get very comfortable with the fact that they're bringing what they need to bring to the table, that you know how to work with them, and I would say that you know how to fight with them. It's very easy when everything's going well and you know that everything is, everyone's getting along, but people don't agree all the time and they don't get along all the time. And typically startups explode because of founder fighting. So if you're starting from the get-go, whatever, but if you're adding someone before you give them any equity and become imprisoned, if you will, in that relationship, try it out and think about it. It's like a marriage. It's actually worse than a marriage because when you get married, a lot of the hours are spent sleeping, and there's very nice ways of bringing peace back to the whole household. You don't have that in your startup. So you need to make sure that it's many, many waking hours with that person. If he's very smart, but you can't stand him, don't go into it, right? It's not a good enough reason. You need to find someone who's at least as good as you. Don't be afraid of taking smarter, better people. It'll make you more successful. And then you need to try and figure out that it can work. So if you've already got an ESOP plan, do you guys know ESOP? It's an employee stock option plan. So it's a good idea to bring in the founder on an ESOP plan rather than in equity if you have that. Because if he leaves and you're not getting along, the stock isn't going away at that point. I joined a company where I was told, hey, we'll give you a third of the company. And at first I thought, whatever, maybe, he started before me, that's fair. And then within a very short period of time, I found out that very little would be done, that everything that was being done was pretty much falling on me. And I came back and I said, listen, I'm not sure I want to do this at all. And he said, well, what is it that you want? I said, listen, I think if I'm going to be doing so much work, I'm going to be running with this for so long, I don't think I should have less than half of this. And he went back and thought about it and he said, you know what, there's a logic to what you're saying. And we split the company 50-50 and ran together for many years. So I think you've got to be very honest. You've got to be very willing to talk about these things. There is no one single answer. Regarding the second part of the question on the investors, so I wouldn't say that it works like that, meaning you take 100% of the company and divide it up between the founders. Then as you add either investors or employees, you start giving stock to them. So it's not a full allocation that's given from the get-go, but rather negotiations that lead to certain amounts that are given. I would say that the more critical your employees, the more you're going to give him, but typically it'll be very little. If you cannot pay a salary, it'll be more. Again, I would really recommend going the ESOP route and not stock, but with the very first employees before you have the ESOP, you may well have to do it in terms of equity. Sometimes you may be able to tell them, as we raise the money and there's something to do, we'll give you the equity then as an ESOP. So also something to consider. The investors, so the way it works is the following. If you take in an angel investor and he's very, very strong, he might be greedy and say, I want 50% of your company. That's a lot. You think twice, maybe you should walk away. Not sure you should give something like that, but I have seen many deals where that's done. If it's just money, I really think you should reconsider it. If it's smart money or someone who has great contacts or a name that will open all the other doors for you, it's a different story. It might be a better idea to consider it, but really try and figure out what you're getting, what the value for money is. There are many agreed upon standards of what you should be giving away when it comes to institutional money. So seed, A round, B round, etc. Typically, you have two types of investors. So you have the private ones and they do whatever works for them, right? But in the institutional ones, you have most funds that will want to take between 20 and 30% of a round of the company, meaning. So you have to play around with that. You've got to try and figure out when you go talk to them what their business model is and adapt your story to their business model if you want to stand a chance of being able to raise money. There's no point in going to someone saying, I want to raise €1 million when that VC invests between 3 and 5 million euro. It's just not a good match. So either adapt your story, create an Excel that justifies why you need 3 to 5 million euro, or go to another VC. Both things are legitimate and feasible. When I started out, I kept going to people and they would tell me, oh, you don't understand what you're doing. You need to bootstrap it. Don't ask for more than 500K. Then I'd go to the next VC and he'd say, oh, why are you asking for 500K? This requires at least $5 million. You don't know what you're talking about. And then I had the people in the middle that said 5 million is too rich and 500 won't get you anywhere. You need $1.5 to $2 million. And I got fed up with it at some point. And so I created 3 Excels and 3 decks, the 500, the 1.5, and the 5. And I'd come into the meeting and I'd spend the first 5 minutes just asking about the person and what their investments are, what their favorite investment is, the areas that they deal with, what typically they would like to take in a company. And then very, very elegantly, I would open the right deck so that they could see that I have a very good fit for what they have. And it worked out very well because the companies were now focusing on whether what I'm offering is something they're interested in or not, as opposed to whether I'm a good fit or not to their business model. Don't forget the VCs in the end are entrepreneurs. They go out every 3, 4, 5 years to raise money, just like you guys do, maybe a little more spread out. They raise a lot more, of course, in each round that they raise, but they need to prove to their investors that they have good returns. It's the exact same story. They are entrepreneurs. And so don't expect them to be flexible in what they're doing because they cannot. They have their investors on the other side who will also say, but you told me you're going to do X, why are you doing Y? So it's I think those are rules of thumb that will help you figure these things out. And if you look online, you'll see a lot of the statistics on who likes what and what size of funds do what.
Thank you, Ornit. Even I know that I see that you have joined us from Noon Invest, and the last time we had similar questions. So if you want to ask.
Sorry, I was here. I just had some technical issues. My name is Evan Kron Petterson. I work for Noon Invest, founded Noon Invest. What we do is that we are building like a robo advisory platform. So we're now getting to the stage where we're ready to scale. Obviously, we have some work to do. And I think that some of the points that you have been talking about already has been very useful for us in terms of how do you connect to people in terms of salary versus stock options and stuff like that. But for you as a bank, as an investor, looking at fintechs, I mean, are there certain things that you would look for that would be like deal breakers for what would make you interested or uninterested?
Deal breakers, is a big word, right? I mean, things change and it's a fluid market, and I think they change in 2 fronts, right? One of them, the areas of interest we may have may fluctuate over time, and B, our focus area in terms of investment size or types might change with time. I'll give you an example. I think pre-COVID, people were all looking at very late stage, large growth companies because it was an exciting time with large companies doing very well. COVID has affected them in a very substantial manner, and so people are looking at earlier stage companies suddenly overnight. So I think in that sense, that would be something that you should consider when looking at deal breakers. We would not work with companies that have disreputable people in their investors or on their board or things like that. So I think that's a real deal breaker, as opposed to we like to invest in companies that have very strong investors, which is, I'd say, a very strong preference, but not a deal breaker to the same extent. So that's one. I think the other one is we would not deal with companies that deal in certain areas that we're uncomfortable with. And I'll give examples. Let's say that what you're doing is 95% in equities, and then 5% you're doing cryptocurrency. There's a fair chance that we would say, we don't do cryptocurrency, we don't want to invest in this company. I'm saying this a little more gently because it's not as black and white. For instance, if you're doing compliance for crypto, maybe we would be interested in it. In a year, we might say, oh, crypto is now okay. But right now, as things stand, that would probably stop the discussion short, and we would probably not do much of anything with you at that point. Does that help you in terms of guidelines?
Absolutely, absolutely. Very good, thanks.
Thank you. We have 2 more people that I would like to invite. I will start with Pretty, and then we can finish with Ricardo. Pretty.
Yes, hello. I think, there you go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So my name is Preeti. I am a founder of Positival AS, which is a R&D-based startup here. We are digitalizing part of physiotherapy care, and I have a background as a musculoskeletal physio. So basically, we have completed our market research and developed the MVP, and we are now ready to working on a go-to-market, and we'll pretty soon launch. Ornit, I had like a question with regards to something answered. I have a question with regards to something that you commented earlier. You were saying that when you, us as a company, we actually are building a global strategy already from the get-go, because physiotherapy is a part of primary care that is least developed. So we're both working with the sustainability goals, and we are working towards improving, progressing, and disrupting physiotherapy as it is, because the research is there, the evidence is there, but it's not being applied. But when I approach, for example, mentors here in Norway, then when I'm talking to them, I'm saying we have a global market. Then they basically tell me to step back and sort of narrow down our scope, and telling me that don't think so big, like you're all over the place, you need to be focused, which I understand for the MVP process and the market research process. But I'm just like wondering the contradiction with regards to how to approach this problem, basically.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. And I saw that Christina, I think, was commenting that she's having the same thing. And it's not that your mentors don't know what they're talking about, or that I don't know what I'm talking about. I think that the answer is that both things can be true at the same time. The way I would look at it is the following. First of all, focus is obviously key. And focus means you shouldn't be trying to run around in America, Germany, France, Italy, India, Israel at the same time. You need to have some geographic focus. And that, I think, makes sense from the get-go. And if you have an MVP with one player, then the temptation is to say, do your MVP, focus on that, and then look further. And I understand that temptation. That is a place where I would try and push you to not do that, because the number of large enterprises, including some of mine, that have focused on a startup with all the best will in the world, but then have gone on to shift attention because their budget changed, the sponsor left, regulation suddenly came in and said, oh, you know what, we're not allowed to do this anymore. And you spent a year and a half working with someone who now cannot do anything with you. That's pretty bad, I think, if you get into a situation like that. So I'm always quite keen on not spending all the time and attention only on one player, but rather trying to get maybe 2, maybe even 3, so that you have your eggs in several baskets. I would say, and my daughter's a physical therapist, so I'm in this space. When I look at it from my perspective, I would say an additional thing that you should also focus on a specific area. You probably cannot do breathing physical therapy and sports physical therapy at the same time. They're not the same use cases. So really focus, I'm completely in favor. I commend you for having a global approach from the get-go. because I think it would not make sense to create a product like this, for instance, and I'll just take that as an example. If it was focused on the specific needs of a specific healthcare company in Norway and could not be replicated elsewhere, then you'd have a nice way. And maybe that's an important point as well. You may have a great company that cannot raise a dime from VCs. So the great company is a company that you may have a little bit of money from friends and family or a loan, and you end up having a company that will earn you a fantastic living, maybe even give you an exit that you can buy yourself your summer home and a little boat, whatever it is that you guys in Norway do as your, when you breathe a little easier financially, and that's fine. It's not a company that a VC would invest in, right? That's not to say, by the way, that in the end you'll get more from the VC-funded company. Maybe yes, maybe no. So you need to make your choices in terms of how you go approach this this entire business, and make some difficult choices in terms of lifestyle that you want, etc. I would absolutely approach large hospitals, for instance. I don't know if they're the candidates in the US, and then maybe approach the ones that also have venture attached to their programs, because I think, and I'm saying US, you can translate that to anything else, right? Because I think those are the things that will help you raise your next round of money. So if you're out to raise a lot of money, you should absolutely try and get your MVP with 1 or 2 players that are not small local players, unless you have a large player that is world, has a world recognition.
Thank you.
That's helpful.
Thank you. We have 6 more minutes, and I would like to invite Ricardo, and we will finish with you.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Raya. Hi, Ornit. I don't have a startup yet. I'm still on that idea phase, trying to decide what can work and what cannot work, like I'm doing window shopping. But I have one question for you. You kind of mentioned it earlier, but I wanted to understand, in your opinion, as an investor, what when you look to a deck, what it matters the most for you when you decide to invest in that company, or if we put it in other ways, what you don't like to see in a deck that would make you not invest in that company?
That's a great question. So there's a number of things. I want the deck to look professional. So a sloppy deck will usually get me to feel that the company is not ready, it hasn't come to a place where it's at. That's one. For me, and at the very early stages, so I guess for the larger companies, this is irrelevant, but the deck should be in English from the get-go. So if the deck arrives in Israel in Hebrew, or if you guys, and I've worked with French startups who said, oh, it's in French, and we'll translate it. I'm half French. The French part isn't a problem for me, but I cannot share it within my organization. Don't do that to me, right? So I think from the get-go, have a deck in English that is really professionally done, no spelling mistakes, no disorganization in the story. Think about it as telling a story. You can imagine that you are telling a story about who you are, how you came up with the idea, why you think it's a great idea. And the great idea means something, that we can all sink our teeth into, that we understand it's a very large potential. What you've done so far, why you're different than the others, and what you need to get to the next place, or maybe in the other, right? First, whatever, the end, I was maybe disorganized myself now in the way I was telling it. And there's a lot of YouTube lectures that can help you work through that. And I think there are people that you can pay to help you tell the story better. But I think in the end, it's really about storytelling. You need to make sure that the person on the other side is excited to hear what comes next, to turn the next page in your book. And as long as you've gone and done that well, and you understand what the other person needs, and that I think is true for an investment deck, it's true for a sales deck. You're not selling what you've done, you're selling what the other person wants to hear. Always remember that. It's not about your message, it's about what they want to receive. And I'm not saying lie through your teeth and tell them you're going to provide them something you don't have. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying refocus your story to the right audience at any given time. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ornit, and that was a nice message to end with. I hope this was very useful. I mean, I'm still learning, and I learned from this, and I'm always happy to connect with everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have more questions, please get in touch with me. If you want to hear more about what Citi does, how they help startups, if you want to get more info about their accelerator program, get in touch with me. I will connect you with the team, with Ornit, with Annelie, and the others. And now, actually, I will stay a few more minutes because some, I know, for example, Nali had one question that I can help you with. So thank you very much to everyone, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you, Ornit. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much, Raya, for organizing this. Thank you.
It was fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm staying here a little bit longer. Everybody staying? Who's staying with us? Okay. Sonali, you had a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
My question is that how the market see if it is like, if I want to start and I come from India, so how does the market see? How is about the investment part? How the market is ready to invest on the immigrant owners?
Well, you know, here I would say it's not about looking at yourself as an immigrant owner or an immigrant founder. It's about having a good business case. It's about what's the startup about? What's the problem you're solving? You need to look at it from that perspective. You know, I myself, I'm not from Norway. It's been 6 years I'm here, but I honestly never had these questions. I never was wondering about what it is to be a foreigner, what it is to be a woman. Because if it's not a foreigner, sometimes you ask yourself about how it is to be a woman. I think that the moment we start putting labels on ourselves, this is the moment where we start actually becoming the label. Okay, so that's my own perception. I believe that we create our own reality. We create what we believe in. So I would highly recommend you. That's my personal advice. That's my personal philosophy. To not see yourself as an immigrant, you're an entrepreneur. Not even see yourself as a woman. That's my personal perspective, okay? So you are allowed to go out there and say, I'm a female entrepreneur, and this is some people's message, some women's message. They want to be a female entrepreneur and inspire other women. You have to find what resonates with you. Personally, this is my personal perspective. I found it empowering not to see myself as an immigrant, for example, or a woman, or a mom entrepreneur. I even hear that some people introduce themselves as, I'm a mom entrepreneur, I'm a parent entrepreneur. Why that? You know, you're an entrepreneur. So please focus more on your business. Don't focus on who you are, or how people perceive you, or how the ecosystem perceives you, or how investors perceive you. Focus on finding a problem that clients would pay for, a problem worth solving. That's what you should focus on, and forget the rest. Focus on your business, on your startup, on your idea, on your vision, as Ornit said, on your story, the story of your company. That's what you should focus on.
Okay.
Do people agree with me?
It sounds nice, but yeah, it's the same for everybody, so it is good.
Anyone wants to contribute with their own experience? Ingar, what do you think? You know, I think that here in Norway, I get actually this question a lot about how is it for foreigners to come to Norway and to establish a business. And I think that Norway is a great place for entrepreneurs. It's a great place for people. It's a great place for women. So, and the Nordics in general. So let's just make the most of this opportunity we have to be part of an equal society which recognizes our rights. And let's not focus on any possible negativity. Let's just focus on getting shit done. Okay?
Raya, can I pitch in on this question for Sonali? So, Sonali, I'm Norwegian bred with an Indian heritage, and I know that having that is actually a benefit. Like my company, we are actually also targeting India very early on. I was lucky enough to be a part of a business delegation last year that was in India with the Prime Minister of Norway, and I know that there is a collaboration between India and Norway, which is formalized. So there is actually a strategy for startups from Norway to collaborate with India. And this also comes for companies like Tech Mahindra and Tata Consulting Services. They have been to Innovation Norway and had presentations because Norway is a very R&D based research-based startups, and we have a different approach and mentality here. So in the long run, I think that a lot of these research-based startups, they have a longer survival according to the statistics and the research. So I actually agree with Raya, focus on the problem, focus on the solution that you're building for the people that will be using it. At the same time, don't limit yourself, because Norway is such a small, like there's 5 million people in Norway. That's like a village in India, right? So even the VCs, whoever you're going to be looking at a later stage, they will be looking at the larger population and the users and the customers rather than, being here and in Norway. So.
And as you mentioned, Priti, it's about actually even using your diversity as an asset, seeing it as something positive. Thank you, everyone. Does anyone have another question or want to contribute with something? Alyosha, I saw that you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I did this time because before I was talking and I hadn't unmuted myself. So apologies, I was actually paying attention before. No, this was great. I mean, really, Ornit's feedback was just spot on, and we're trying to do all these things. We're approaching labels. We're trying to find, actually, he was mentioning the radio show. We're actually trying to do a radio show on Twitch, and we're looking for hosts. We're looking for hosts on TikTok everywhere. And yeah, no, our challenge right now is that we believe that we're doing something that more people are going to try to do. So we just want to keep ahead of the competition. That's kind of the challenge.